So now that we've learned some of the basic features in Autodesk Inventor, I really want to drive home the idea that you can build pretty much whatever you want. And so to drive that home, let's go ahead and build something. Let's go ahead and build Thor's hammer. So let's go to New, Standard Document, and let's start sketching. We'll go to our XY plane or our front plane. Let's go ahead and draw a rectangle. What I want to do is I want to click and I want to drag. And I want this to be pretty big, so I'm going to zoom out until it looks like it's a little over 10 inches in width, and then it's a little bit over 6 inches in height, and that's good right there. Around 10 to 15 inches for the width, and then around 5 to 10 inches for the height. And what I want to do is, if you notice, you can hit Tab on your keyboard, and you can go between these two measurements. You can see which one's highlighted. I hit the Tab button on my keyboard, and the other one's highlighted. I want to go ahead and look at the width, and I'm going to make that 12 inches, and I'm going to hit Tab on my keyboard, not Enter, and that allows me to go to my other line. So I'm going to go ahead and type that one in as 8 inches. I'm going to make this a 12 by 8 rectangle, and from there, I'm going to hit Enter on my keyboard. As you can see, we kind of have, or not kind of have, we have a 12 by 8 rectangle that is fully constrained. We can finish our sketch and go ahead and extrude this. Let's make this extrusion go ahead and be 8 inches. And if we don't like this, if we want to play around with it, we can always go back and we can right-click on the feature that we just created in our browser and go down to Edit Feature if we want to. And we can change that dimension if we didn't want it to be 8, but we do. So from here, well, let's look at what we need to add next. Let's go back and look at our picture. And we can see we've got some edges that are sort of coming out of the big box shape in the first place. So let's go ahead and do that now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on this face here, and I'm going to go to New Sketch. And instead of redrawing this rectangle, and what am I talking about? Well, if we look really closely, we can see that it doesn't exactly come out all the way. There's a little edge that's not popping out. So if we look, what I want to do, instead of redrawing this square, I want to draw Project Geometry. I want to click Project Geometry. And what does this do? Well, it allows us to project a shape that's already drawn onto our sketch. So I'm just going to click on the square, and you can see I've got a yellow rectangle on here now. It's projected onto our sketch, so I don't have to redraw that square. It's already measured for me and everything. I'm going to go ahead and click my Offset feature here next to Project Geometry in my Modifies. And I'm going to click on this rectangle, and I can make it either bigger or smaller. You can do this with any shape. And I want to make it a distance smaller of 0.1 inches. And then I'll hit Enter on my keyboard. Right-click OK, finish my sketch. And I want to extrude, not the outer shape. You could do the outer shape. I want to do the inner rectangle. So you could do the outer shape on accident. You want that. So I'm going to go back to extrude. I'm going to do the inner rectangle. And I don't want it that far. I'm going to go ahead and make it 1.5 inches. And if you look back at the picture, you can see, well, it's kind of slanted. It's not exactly straight. And what that's called is a chamfer. And it's here in your Modify and 3D Models next to Fillet. So let's go ahead and click Chamfer. And it allows us to give it an edge. I'm going to go ahead and make this edge 1.5 inches. And I'm going to click on each one of these 4 edges that I just created. And you can kind of see what's happening here. I'm going to hit Apply. And I'm going to close this out. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other end. I'm going to right-click on this face. I'm going to go to New Sketch. I, again, want to project this square. And then I want to click Offset and drag it in. And, again, make it 0.1 inches. We'll finish our sketch, and we'll extrude this one out 1.5 inches as well. Hit OK. Add a chamfer. Make sure this one is 1.5 inches as well. And go ahead and click on those 4 corners. Then if we go back and look, we can see that it doesn't just chamfer off at these edges. It also chamfers off right here on these edges, these inside edges. So we can add a chamfer. It looks like they're a little bit smaller, so I'm going to change that to 1 inch. I'm going to click on these 4 corners. So 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to go down here and do 4. And I'm just going to hit Apply and close this out. And you can see we're starting to get sort of the outline of Thor's hammer. And what's next? Okay, well, we need to add a handle. So I'm going to go ahead and put the handle on top. I'm going to start a new sketch here. And I'm going to tell this handle, I'm going to draw a circle here. I'm going to tell this circle to be 1.2 in diameter. Then let's see, well, I want it centered. Okay. So how to center? What I'm going to do is I'm going to click my dimension tool, and I'm going to click on this line right here. Not this outer line, but this inside rectangular line. And I'm going to click dimension, click on that line, and then click on my circle. And that'll measure to the center of my circle. And I'm going to tell that to be 6 inches from the edge, since that's half of 12, and this from here to here should be a length of 12. Then lastly, if you right-click it OK, you might notice you might still be able to move your circle up and down. Well, of course you can, because you haven't told it where to stop. So I'm going to click dimension again. I want to click on the circle, and I want to click on this edge. And you might recall that before that this was 8 inches long. So hold on, let's go ahead and do that. Divide that by 2. We'll make it 4 inches. You say, well, wait, Mr. Anderson, that's not centered. And that kind of makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control-Z to fix it. I'm going to Control-Z again to get rid of that dimension. And this time I'm going to measure it to this outside edge. Well, why am I going to this outside edge before I type it? Well, if you hit the home button, you can kind of, not the home button, the corner button, you can kind of see what's going on here. Is this was my edge. So what is he talking about? Well, if we look, this was the original face before that chamfer. So we want to measure it to this line this time. This line was our original edge before, and we extruded out another shape, if you recall. But back to the point, let's go ahead and add to this dimension, and let's make it 4 inches to make it halfway through. And now we've got a circle that's perfectly centered. Let's go ahead and finish our sketch and extrude this shape up. Let's make it 12 inches. Okay, we've got our handle. And the last thing I want to add is this weird circular thing on top. So we'll go to the other side, we'll right click, we'll start a new sketch. I'm going to go ahead and draw my circle, and the great thing is I don't have to actually recenter it. I already have it centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that previous circle, and I'm going to center this circle with that one, and that will be centered. And I'm going to tell this to be, let's look at the size here. I think 4.5 inches would be good, and hit enter. You might say, well, Mr. Anderson, what's going on with this other circle? Well, don't worry about it. That's just the other circle, the one above it. This circle right here, projecting onto this plane. Or let's zoom out. This is projecting, so we use our project geometry. Sometimes it'll project itself without having to click project geometry to get it there. But from here, we're going to go ahead and finish our sketch, and we can extrude this. I want to extrude both the inner circle and the outer circle, so I'm going to click on both. And I'm going to tell it to extrude 0.125. And we look, and we might decide that's not enough, so we can make it 0.25 if we want to, and that looks a little bit better. And hit OK. And there we go. We have Thor's hammer. And if you want, you could take the time to color it, decorate it, play with the features a little bit in Tools and adjust, and see if you can make this look as much or as little like Thor's hammer as you want it to.